Shocking 400 jet. Cover-up Crockett GRILLS. Bondi over taxpayer betrayal. Ever wonder what really goes down in those explosive congressional hearings? Buckle up for a jaw-dropping showdown in a fiery House Appropriations Committee hearing. Representative Jasmine Crockett goes toe-to-toe with Attorney General Pam Bondi. Why won't Bondi spill on her role in Trump's January 6th pardons? What's she hiding about her Qatar ties and that $400 million private jet? Trump accepted sparks fly as Crockett unleashes sharp accusations of corruption, hypocrisy, and wasting taxpayer dollars, while Bondi fires back, turning the room into a battleground. Is this a fight for truth or just political theater? From ethical scandals to dodged questions, this clash reveals what the mainstream media won't touch. Why should you care? Because it's your money and your justice on the line. If you're fed up with government secrets and want to know what's really at stake, this is the video for you. Join us as we unpack the drama, expose the hidden truths, and break down why this matters to every American who values accountability. Don't miss a second. Click now to uncover the real story behind this heated confrontation. The House Appropriations Committee hearing room buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the weight of accountability. At the center of this high-stakes showdown stood Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Texas Democrat known for her razor-sharp rhetoric and fearless pursuit of truth. Across from her sat Attorney General Pam Bondi, a polarizing figure whose ties to President Trump had long stirred controversy. The stage was set for a confrontation that would captivate anyone who values justice and transparency in government. Crockett wasted no time, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. Attorney General, how can you stand here and claim to protect law enforcement when your administration's actions tell a different story? She demanded, her eyes locked on Bondi. She zeroed in on President Trump's blanket pardon of January 6th. Rioters issued on January 20th, a move that shocked the nation. Those pardons didn't just undermine our Capitol Police. They cost taxpayers millions in DOJ resources to clean up the mess Crockett charged, tying the issue directly to the committee's mission of overseeing federal spending. Her words carried the weight of tragedy. Think about the Capitol Police officers who risked their lives that day. She said, her tone both fierce and somber. 5 of them are gone, and their families are still grieving. Yet your president pardoned the very people who attacked them. How does that square with your so-called commitment to law enforcement? The question hung in the air, a challenge to Bondi's credibility and the administration's priorities. Crockett's approach was deliberate, designed to resonate with Americans who demand accountability. The January 6th attack on the Capitol wasn't just a distant memory, it was a wound, still fresh for many, especially those who saw it as an assault on democracy itself. By framing the pardons as a betrayal of law enforcement and a drain on public funds, Crockett connected the dots for taxpayers who foot the bill for DOJ's operations. Every dollar spent unraveling those pardons is a dollar not protecting our communities, she said, her voice rising with conviction. Bondi, visibly tense, prepared to respond, but Crockett wasn't done. She leaned into the fiscal angle, knowing the Appropriations Committee was laser-focused on how every penny is spent. We're here to talk about budgets, about responsibility, she said. So tell me, Attorney General, how does letting those rioters walk free align with the DOJ's mission to keep us safe? How does that justify the millions we allocate to your department? The room fell silent, all eyes on Bondi, who now faced a direct challenge to her leadership and the administration's ethics. This opening salvo set the tone for a hearing that promised more than just political theater. It was a clash over values, justice, duty, and the responsible use of taxpayer money. Crockett's bold start didn't just call out Bondi, it demanded answers for a nation still grappling with the fallout of January 6th. What would Bondi say next, and how far would this confrontation go? The tension in the House Appropriations Committee hearing room was palpable, the echoes of Representative Jasmine Crockett's opening salvo still reverberating. Having laid bare the contradiction between Attorney General Pam Bondi's claims of supporting law enforcement and President Trump's blanket pardon of January 6th, rioters, Crockett now zeroed in On a critical question, what role did Bondi play in those controversial pardons? This moment was more than a political sparring match. It was about uncovering whether their hard-earned dollars were funding a Department of Justice DOJ that prioritized justice or political loyalty. Crockett leaned forward, her gaze unwavering, her Texas drawl, carrying both authority and urgency. Attorney General Bondi, let's get to the heart of it. She began, her voice steady but laced with righteous indignation. On January 20th, President Trump issued a blanket pardon for every single rioter involved in the January 6th attack on our Capitol. That decision didn't just happen in a vacuum. You're the head of the DOJ, the one overseeing justice in this country. So tell us, did you advise the president on those pardons? And if so, what did you say? The question was a dagger aimed not just at Bondi's actions, but at the integrity of the DOJ's budget, which the Appropriations Committee was tasked with scrutinizing. The room stilled, committee members and spectators alike, hanging on Bondi's response. This wasn't just about a single decision, it was about whether the DOJ, funded by billions in taxpayer money, was being used to shield political allies rather than uphold the law. Crockett pressed the fiscal angle, knowing her audience cared deeply about government waste. Every time the DOJ has to pivot because of these pardons, reallocating resources, dropping cases, or dealing with the fallout that's taxpayer money down the drain, she said. We allocate billions to your department to protect our communities, not to play cleanup for the president's buddies. So what was your advice, and how did it impact our budget? Bondi shifted in her seat, her expression a mix of defiance and caution. Representative Crockett, she began, her tone measured but firm. I'm not going to discuss any conversations I may or may not have had with the President of the United States. The answer was a wall, a refusal to engage, that only fueled Crockett's resolve. Bondi continued, My role as Attorney General is to uphold the law, and I stand by my record of supporting law enforcement. It was a rehearsed line, one that sidestepped the question entirely, and Crockett wasn't having it. Mr. Chairman, I'm reclaiming my time, Crockett interjected, her voice slicing through Bondi's deflection. The parliamentary move was a power play, a reminder that she controlled this moment. With all due respect, Attorney General, that's not an answer. We're not here for talking points. This is the Appropriations Committee where we decide how taxpayer dollars are spent. You're telling me you won't even say whether you advised the president on a decision that's costing us millions. That's not accountability, that's dodging. The audience in the room murmured, and for the viewers, this was the kind of raw confrontation that demanded attention. Crockett didn't let up. Let's be clear, she said, her words deliberate, each one landing like a hammer. The January 6th pardons didn't just let rioters walk free. They forced the DOJ to redirect resources, to abandon prosecutions, to deal with public backlash. That's staff time, legal expenses, and law enforcement efforts that could have gone to fighting crime or protecting our neighborhoods. And you, as Attorney General, were in the room when those decisions were made. So I'll ask again, did you advise the president, yes or no? Her repetition of the question was strategic, framing Bondi's refusal as an admission of guilt in the eyes of taxpayers who value transparency. Bondi's response was a repeat of her earlier stance. I will not discuss private conversations with the president, she said, her voice tighter now, betraying a hint of frustration. My focus is on ensuring the DOJ operates within its budget to keep Americans safe. The answer was a non-starter, and Crockett pounced. So you're telling this committee and the American people watching that you won't be straight with us, she said, her tone a mix of disbelief and outrage. We're not asking for gossip, Attorney General. We're asking about your role in a decision that's bleeding our budget dry. If you can't answer that, what are we even funding your department for? The exchange was a masterclass in holding power to account, tailored to an audience that's seen enough political gamesmanship to know when someone's dodging. Crockett's focus on the budget kept the conversation grounded in the Appropriations Committee's mission, making it relatable to viewers who care about how their taxes are spent. This isn't just about January 6th, she said, broadening the stakes. It's about whether the DOJ is a tool for justice or a shield for the president's agenda. Every time you dodge a question, you're telling taxpayers you don't respect their right to know. As the clock ticked, Crockett used her final moments to drive the point home. "Mr. Chairman, let's be real," she said, turning briefly to the committee head before facing Bondi again. "We're here to talk about accountability, about making sure the DOJ's budget serves the people, not political favors. If the Attorney General can't answer a simple question about her role in a decision that's costing us millions, what does that say about her leadership? What does that say about this administration?" The question lingered unanswered as Crockett yielded her time, leaving Bondi on the defensive, and viewers eager for what came next. This moment wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a battle over trust, transparency, and the responsible use of public funds. Crockett's relentless pursuit of answers, framed through the lens of taxpayer dollars, struck a chord with an audience tired of government secrets. Bondi's refusal to engage only deepened the intrigue, setting the stage for an even fiercer confrontation. What would Crockett uncover next, and would Bondi ever crack under the pressure? The House Appropriations Committee hearing had already erupted into a battleground, with Representative Jasmine Crockett's piercing questions about Attorney General Pam Bondi's role in the January 6th pardons setting the stage for a deeper dive. Having exposed Bondi's refusal to discuss her advice to President Trump, a move that Crockett tied to wasted taxpayer dollars, she now shifted gears, turning the spotlight on a broader, more insidious issue: corruption. This moment was a rallying cry for those fed up with government waste and ethical lapses, as Crockett framed the Trump administration's actions as a betrayal of public trust and fiscal responsibility. Crockett stood tall, her presence commanding the room, her Texas-rooted conviction resonating with every word. "Mr. Chairman, let's talk about what's really going on here." She began, her voice a blend of righteous fury and calculated precision. "This administration isn't just making bad decisions, it's wasting taxpayer money on corruption, hypocrisy, and a blatant disregard for justice. And as the head of the Department of Justice, Attorney General Bondi, you're at the center of it." The accusation was bold, a direct challenge to Bondi's leadership and the DOJ's stewardship of billions in federal funds, which the Appropriations Committee was tasked with overseeing. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle, then zeroed in on a specific concern. "We're here to talk about how our money is spent, about ensuring the DOJ serves the people, not political agendas," Crockett said. "But when I look at this administration, I see a pattern of using taxpayer dollars to protect the powerful, not the public. And that starts with you, Attorney General. Your record raises questions about whose interests you're really serving." The statement was a hook designed to keep viewers glued to their screens, wondering what bombshell Crockett would drop next. Crockett's next move was surgical. "Let's talk about your past," she said, her eyes locked on Bondi. "You were registered as a foreign agent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, weren't you? Specifically for the country of Qatar. That's not a small detail, it's a fact that speaks to your priorities and how they might affect the DOJ's budget." The room buzzed with murmurs as Crockett tied Bondi's history to the committee's mission. When you represent a foreign government even for a short time, it raises questions about conflicts of interest. And when those conflicts touch the DOJ, that's taxpayer money on the line, money we allocate for ethical oversight, for investigations, for keeping our justice system clean. Bondi's face tightened, her posture stiffening as she prepared to respond. "Representative Crockett," she said, her tone clipped but controlled, "I represented Qatar for a very short time, and it was for anti-human trafficking efforts tied to the World Cup. That's hardly the scandal you're making it out to be." But Crockett was ready, her rebuttal swift and unrelenting. "Don't downplay it, Attorney General," she shot back. "You were a registered foreign agent, and that's not just a footnote, it's a red flag. How much of our DOJ budget is being spent navigating the fallout from your past ties? How much are taxpayers paying for ethical reviews or conflict of interest probes because of decisions you made?" The exchange was a masterclass in accountability, tailored to an audience that values transparency and despises government waste. Crockett's focus on the budget was deliberate, grounding her accusations in the Appropriations Committee's core mission. Every time the DOJ has to investigate a potential conflict that's staff hours, legal resources, and taxpayer dollars that could be fighting crime or protecting our communities, she said. We're not here to fund your personal history lessons, Attorney General. We're here to make sure the DOJ's budget serves justice, not your resume. Bondi tried to regain control. My work for Qatar was fully disclosed, and it was about saving lives, not serving foreign interests, she insisted. I've always been transparent about my record. But Crockett wasn't buying it. Transparent, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. If you were so transparent, why are we even having this conversation? Why does this committee have to dig for answers about how your past affects our budget? The American people deserve to know if their money is being used to clean up your conflicts or to protect our democracy. Crockett's rhetoric soared, connecting with viewers who've seen too many politicians skirt responsibility. This isn't just about Qatar, she said, broadening the stakes. It's about a pattern of corruption that runs through this administration. From pardons that let rioters walk free to questionable foreign ties, we're seeing taxpayer dollars funneled into protecting the powerful, not the people. And you as Attorney General are supposed to be the firewall, not the enabler. The accusation was a gut punch, framing Bondi as complicit in a system that prioritizes loyalty over duty. She drove the point home, her words a clarion call for accountability. This committee has a job to do, Crockett said. We decide how much money the DOJ gets to keep our country safe. But if you're out here representing foreign governments one day and running the DOJ the next, how can we trust you to spend that money wisely? How can taxpayers trust that their dollars aren't being used to cover up conflicts or shield political allies? The question lingered unanswered as Bondi sat in silence, her earlier defiance giving way to unease. This was the kind of moment that demanded attention, a fierce advocate calling out corruption in real time, with taxpayer money at the heart of the fight. Crockett's ability to tie Bondi's foreign agent past to the DOJ's budget made the issue personal for anyone who's ever questioned how their taxes are spent. We're not here for excuses, Crockett concluded, her voice resolute. We're here for answers. And if you can't give them, Attorney General, then you're telling every American watching that their trust doesn't matter. The stage was set for an even deeper probe into Bondi's Qatar ties, with Crockett showing no signs of backing down. What secrets would she uncover next, and how would Bondi defend herself against accusations that struck at the heart of her credibility? For an audience craving truth, this was only the beginning of a confrontation that promised to expose the rot beneath the surface. The House Appropriations Committee hearing crackled with intensity, as Representative Jasmine Crockett's relentless pursuit of truth had already put Attorney General Pam Bondi on the ropes. Having accused the Trump administration of squandering taxpayer dollars on corruption, Crockett now honed in on a bombshell: Bondi's past as a registered foreign agent for Qatar. This was a gripping moment, exposing potential conflicts of interest that could bleed public funds dry. Crockett's fiery style and focus on fiscal accountability kept viewers hooked, eager to see how deep the rabbit hole went. Crockett leaned into the microphone, her Texas grit unmistakable. Attorney General Bondi, let's get specific. She said, her voice a mix of steel and scorn. You admitted you were a registered foreign agent for Qatar working on anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. That's not just a side gig, it's a red flag for anyone who cares about how our DOJ budget is spent. She paused, letting the accusation land. So tell this committee, did you fully disclose that role during your Senate confirmation hearings, or did you leave taxpayers in the dark about a conflict that could cost us millions? The room buzzed, the weight of Crockett's question clear. The Appropriations Committee oversaw the DOJ's budget, and any hint of undisclosed conflicts could mean funds misspent on ethical probes or legal fallout. We're talking about taxpayer money here, Crockett pressed. Every dollar spent investigating your Qatar ties is a dollar not keeping our streets safe. So were you upfront with the Senate, yes or no? Her directness was a call to action for viewers who demand transparency from those handling their taxes. Bondi's response was defensive, her tone sharp. Representative Crockett. I was fully transparent, she said. My work for Qatar was discussed at my confirmation hearings. It was a short-term effort to combat human trafficking, not some shady deal. But Crockett pounced, sensing weakness. Disgust, she shot back, her skepticism palpable. You didn't disclose it in your documents, did you? That's not transparency, that's a dodge. And when the DOJ has to clean up your omissions, guess who pays? The American taxpayer. Crockett's focus on the budget was relentless, tying Bondi's past to real-world costs. Let's break it down, she said. If your Qatar work raises even one conflict of interest, the DOJ spends money, our money, on ethics reviews, investigations, maybe even lawsuits. That's resources we allocated for justice, not for covering your tracks. Her words resonated with an audience tired of government excuses, framing Bondi's actions as a betrayal of public trust. Bondi tried to counter, her voice rising. I've always followed the law, and my work helped save lives, she insisted. But Crockett wasn't swayed. This isn't about your intentions, Attorney General, she said. It's about accountability. If you didn't disclose everything, you put the DOJ in a bind and taxpayers foot the bill. How can we trust you to manage a multi-billion-dollar budget when your past is a question mark? The exchange was electric, Crockett's tenacity shining through. This committee isn't here to play games, she declared. We're here to protect the people's money. Your Qatar ties aren't just a personal issue, they're a fiscal one. And if you can't own up to your record, you're telling every taxpayer watching that their trust doesn't matter. The challenge left Bondi reeling, the stakes higher than ever. This was a moment of raw truth, exposing how personal conflicts could drain public funds. Crockett's unyielding push for answers set the stage for an even bigger revelation. What else was Bondi hiding, and how much would it cost taxpayers? The House Appropriations Committee hearing was a cauldron of tension, with Representative Jasmine Crockett's relentless interrogation of Attorney General Pam Bondi reaching a fever pitch. Having exposed Bondi's questionable ties to Qatar as a former foreign agent, Crockett now dropped a bombshell that electrified the room: President Trump's acceptance of a $400 million private jet from Qatar. This revelation was a gut punch, spotlighting potential corruption that could drain taxpayer-funded Department of Justice DOJ resources. Crockett's fiery, no-nonsense style kept viewers glued, her focus on fiscal accountability, striking a chord with those fed up with government waste. Crockett leaned into the microphone, her Texas drawl thick with disdain. Attorney General Bondi, let's talk about this $400 million Qatar jet. She said, her voice a blend of incredulity and outrage. President Trump bragged he took it because it looks nice. Are we running a beauty pageant or a country? This is an appropriations hearing where we scrutinize every taxpayer dollar. So tell us, did you advise the president that accepting this jet was legal? And how does your Qatar history not scream conflict of interest? The question was a missile linking Bondi's past to a scandal that reeked of ethical failure, with the DOJ's budget caught in the crosshairs. The room fell silent, committee members and spectators hanging on Bondi's response. Crockett's framing was deliberate, tying the jet to the Appropriations Committee's mission. Every time the DOJ has to investigate a stunt like this, ethics reviews, legal opinions, public fallout, that's taxpayer money down the drain, she said. We allocate billions to your department to uphold justice, not to bankroll the president's vanity projects. So what did you tell him, and how much is this costing us? Her words resonated with viewers who've seen their taxes squandered on government missteps, demanding answers from those in power. Bondi's face was a mask of restraint, but her voice betrayed tension. Representative Crockett, I will not discuss legal advice my office provides to the President of the United States, she said, her tone clipped. The refusal was a brick wall, and Crockett pounced. Dodging again, she snapped, her eyes blazing. Taxpayers fund your office to enforce ethics, not to rubber stamp extravagant gifts from foreign governments. If you greenlit this jet, you're tying the DOJ to a scandal. How many millions are we spending on probes because of your silence? Her demand for transparency was a rallying cry for an audience craving accountability. Crockett doubled down, her rhetoric soaring. "This isn't just about a jet," she said. "It's about whether the DOJ is serving the people or shielding the powerful. If your Qatar ties influenced your advice or lack thereof, we're paying for it. Ethics investigations, legal battles, public trust eroded. That's our money, Attorney General." The accusation left Bondi visibly rattled the hearing room, buzzing with anticipation. For viewers, this was the kind of raw confrontation that exposed the rot beneath polished government facades. The hearing hit a boiling point as Crockett's grilling over the Qatar jet pushed Bondi to the edge. Cornered, Bondi lashed out, her composure cracking. "Representative Crockett, you're grandstanding," she shot back, her voice sharp. "I've seen your viral committee stunts. This isn't a performance, it's a hearing." The jab was personal, referencing Crockett's reputation for memorable takedowns, but it only fueled her fire. This clash was pure dynamite, a battle between deflection and defiance. Crockett didn't flinch. Grandstanding, she retorted, her voice a razor. "What's unacceptable is you dodging questions about taxpayer dollars in an appropriations hearing. You throw cheap shots instead of answers. That's not leadership, that's deflection." Her comeback was a masterstroke, flipping Bondi's attack into evidence of evasion. Viewers weary of political games cheered her refusal to back down. "This committee's about protecting the people's money," Crockett continued. "Your Qatar ties, your silence on the jet. They're red flags. If you can't explain how our DOJ budget's being spent, why should taxpayers trust you?" Bondi doubled down, her tone defiant. "I've always acted with integrity, and my record speaks for itself," she insisted. But Crockett wasn't buying it. "Integrity doesn't hide behind 'I won't discuss,'" she said, her words slicing through the room. "It answers to the people who fund your department. You're telling every taxpayer watching that their trust doesn't matter." The accusation was a clarion call, resonating with an audience that values accountability over excuses. The clash became a standoff, both women unyielding. Crockett seized her final moments to drive the point home. "Mr. Chairman, this is about accountability," she declared, her gaze sweeping the room before locking on Bondi. "The Attorney General's job is to uphold justice, not to dodge questions about foreign jets or past conflicts. If she won't level with us about how our money is being spent, she's failing the American people." The room hummed with tension, Bondi silent, her earlier defiance muted by Crockett's onslaught. This was a defining moment, a fierce advocate exposing cracks in the system with taxpayer dollars at stake. The hearing ended with questions unanswered. What else was Bondi hiding? How much would taxpayers pay for this administration's ethical lapses? Crockett's unapologetic stand was a beacon for those demanding truth, leaving viewers hungry for more. Her parting shot lingered. "We deserve answers, and we won't stop until we get them." The stage was set for a reckoning, with Crockett leading the charge. Imagine a world where government secrets drain your taxpayer dollars. Now, let's talk about it. This fictional showdown between Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi is a wake-up call for accountability. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to dive deeper into stories that challenge power and spark debate. Share this video with friends who care about how their taxes are spent, and drop a comment. If this hearing were real, should Bondi answer for her Qatar ties and the $400 million jet? Let's keep the conversation going. Your voice matters in demanding transparency.